Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Adam Caplan, Geoff Mosher for another Inside the Birds. And look, it's Adam, we got a lot to talk about. The Eagles still don't have an offensive coordinator. They do apparently have some coaches that we've talked about in the past, and we're going to get into that all. But as we record this on Sunday night, January 26th, 9 o'clock p.m., it's hard to even talk sports right now. With the events that happened today, obviously Kobe Bryant and his teenage daughter being killed in a helicopter accident that has sent shockwaves throughout the entire sports world, whatever sport you cover. I mean, we're all big NBA fans and know about Kobe Bryant's, not only his iconic, status in the NBA, but he is a Lower Merion guy right outside Philly, a big Eagles fan. And you and I both remember that during the Eagles Super Bowl run a few years ago, he actually spoke to the team when he had a chance when they were out in L.A. On the day that they lost Carson Wentz to a knee injury.
Yeah, in fact, according to one of the coaches who texted me, I asked him, do you recall, here's my question. Do you recall Kobe talking to the team 2 years ago? Yes, he was amazing. Dude was a stone-cold killer. What happened was, and you, Geoff, just talked about it, let's not forget Kobe actually grew up here very early in his life.
Right.
His dad, Jelly Bean Joe Bryant, was a guy that I watched growing up, number 23. Joe would take his career after the Sixers and go to Italy. That's where Kobe learned Italian, and he became fluent in it. He knew other languages, and we didn't quite know because Kobe was back and forth from Philly to Italy. We weren't sure which teams he rooted for, but especially when the Lakers beat the Sixers in 2001, which was painful for me.
Yeah,
growing up with a Sixer fan. But long story short, Kobe loved the Eagles, and he didn't hide it. And the video that's on Twitter about Kobe going crazy when the Eagles won.
That's right.
That is the coolest. That is such, I got chills watching it again today. Like, when this went down, Geoff, I don't know about you, but I couldn't, stop looking at the videos on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I recall a great video of, and I tweeted it out. It's actually pinned in my profile. It will be probably at least for 24 hours. Shaq and Kobe, we know how, Geoff, we know they had their differences. But they sat down for a interview probably from 2 years ago.
I remember that
from it was on NBA TV, and I found it on YouTube and I tweeted it and I pinned it. They took the commercials out, so it's 37 minutes. You must see this. They encapsulates all their issues, their jealousy, the competitiveness, and the other part of this whole Kobe stuff is, and I didn't quite understand this because I was more Iverson fan, and I couldn't stand the Lakers. Kobe and Larry Bird were very, very similar in their competitiveness. And the hatred that I had for Larry Bird, I mean, I grew up here, Geoff. I hated Larry Bird. I hated the Celtics, the green. McHale, couldn't stand him. Mm-hmm. Kobe in 2001, I couldn't stand it. Him and Shaq, I knew they were going to beat the Sixers. I was out there for the finals for the first two games. Some of the best times of my life watching professional sports. And, Kobe, just his competitiveness. I did not realize how important he was to professional athletes, Geoff. I had no idea. The outpouring of love and just a reverence that professional athletes had, not just NFL players or NBA players, of course, all sports. It's just remarkable. And now I have the grasp of it, of what he meant to people and athletes around the world.
Yeah, no, he had as you mentioned, not just a national impact, a global impact. A lot of athletes, even of his caliber, admired him just for that competitive spirit, that killer instinct that he had on the court. And I think the second takeaway is, before we, get into some Eagle stuff, Adam, is, for us as people in the Philadelphia area, we lose Roy Halladay at a very young age after his career in an airplane accident. Now we lose Kobe Bryant in a helicopter accident. And, it doesn't really take an athlete to teach us this, but it does because we follow sports so much. But kind of the frailty of life where you can just wake up one day and it's out of your control. That part is scary. I mean, it's scary whether you're like me and you have children, or whether you're like just anybody else. You don't have to have kids. Just anybody who just wakes up and realizes it can all be taken away from you in an instant, and sometimes you have no control over it.
Yeah, one thing
I've been thinking about that all day.
One thing I want to add to that, I lost my father and my father-in-law during the 2013 draft. My father had cancer. He decided to go a year before he was going to stop his cancer treatments. And I learned something from my boss at foxsports.com when I was there for a year. She said that you have to go see your parents and you have to say goodbye if you can. We don't always get to say goodbye, and I never forgot that. So when one of my brothers said not to go see my father before he passed because I wanted to have the better memory of when he was healthier, I had to do it. I had to go see him, and I saw my father.
Wow.
24 hours before he went, and I always tell people you got to go do it because I don't want to have any regrets. I want to, I kissed my father goodbye, and I fainted kind of in the other room. I just, the totality of it. So what I'm telling you is always go see them. I don't care what it is, and if your employer won't let you see them, you need to have a better job because you have to. Family always comes first.
Yeah, I tell you, I hugged my daughters just a little bit extra tonight because you're right. It just brings that sense of wanting to be with the people that you love because it can be taken away at any moment.
That's right.
Let's flip the page and get into the Eagles a little bit. We have a lot to talk about. First, a credit to you because a lot of the things that you reported in our last podcast have seemingly come true. Now, the Eagles have not made any announcements, and they will not do so until all of their positions are filled. But it looks like cornerbacks coach, the reports are out there. Marquand Manuel is going to be the Eagles' next cornerbacks coach. That is something that you reported. At least there are high degree of interest in him. It seems like what we've talked about in the last podcast about Matt Burke now moving to become the defensive line coach from senior assistant is going to happen. And we're still waiting on the offensive side to get figured out here. Offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach. I think it's fair to say this. We kind of told people not to panic when you hear guys like Graham Harrell going back to USC or Mike Kafka going to stay in Kansas City. We told people that this was kind of natural and expected to happen for those cases, or maybe a guy like James Urban staying in Baltimore. We explained why he would do that. It's gone on a couple of weeks now, and I know for fans this feels like many years ago when Andy Reid was looking for a defensive coordinator, couldn't find one, and then at the last second, it became Juan Castillo, the offensive line coach. So it just feels like something's murky about the situation. I'll say that.
Yeah, but I think, Geoff, you hit the nail on the head here. They have a plan for it. They only need to hire one person, not 10. Like, I think people are panicking. Oh, my God, the longer they wait. Yeah, the Eagles and the Browns are the teams that need an OC. The worst thing you could do is just hire someone because you're getting late to the process. But I want to go back to something I said on our show last week or last show. Previous show here. The only issue, the real issue for waiting later is not so much the guy not getting the right guy or getting the right guy. It's the teams that they're trying to get them from. Understand this: the later you wait, the harder it is for these coaches not to be blocked. Because if you're those teams and you let these guys go, then you got to fill that role that they were coaching, and it's harder for them. I think we're missing that point here. I think that when you really look at it, if you're a team that has, let's say it's not going to happen because James Urban's already staying. Let's say, for instance, the Eagles wanted to hire James Urban. Well, if you're John Harbaugh 3 weeks in, you're going to say, no, you guys should have hired him 2 weeks ago. I'm not doing this now. How am I going to find a coach now? That would be my reaction because a coach told me this when I was at the Senior Bowl. I'd asked a coach that I'm friendly with, how would you handle the situation? He goes, you have to have at least 6 names. You don't have to interview 6, but if you strike out for 4 or 5 of them, you got to go or 3 or 4 of them, you got to go pretty deep. So to summarize this, I'm sure the Eagles have a deeper list. Now the other question is, people have asked us, what about the teams of the Super Bowl? Well, Geoff mentioned Mike Kafka. As I noted previously, the Chiefs have a plan for Mike Kafka. He's going to replace Eric Bieniemy when Bieniemy becomes head coach, and I think Eric will at some point. The real story here is, most people don't know this. In fact, I don't even think it's been written about, but I thought I hinted about it, so let me explain it. Mike Kafka is unbelievably integral into their game planning each week. He is a Geoff and OC light. So if you're Andy Reid, there's no way in hell you're going to let him go, especially because he's not going to call the plays here. So that's the other issue.
I would also say it would not be shocking if at this time next year, if Mike Kafka was a candidate for a head coach and was interviewing for a head coaching job. So yes, he might be the successor to Bieniemy, but that's only if he's around long enough to do that. We'll see. I mean, there could be a rash of openings next year. And again, if Kansas City has success, they win the Super Bowl this year or next week, I should say, then we'll see what happens with that. Is Mike McDaniel a guy, Adam, that you think the Eagles might be targeting. He's the run game coordinator for the 49ers. But I don't know if a lot of people realize he also has wide receiver coach in his background. So he's not strictly a guy who designed run plays. And I know that's kind of their fear. They want a passing game innovator. Certainly he works for a coach who's considered an innovator in Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, he has pass game concepts in his background. It's really, he's a lot in terms of the pass game. So it's really not an issue. Mm-hmm. I just can't come up with anyone else, Geoff, who would be on these Super Bowl teams that they would talk to. Quite frankly, I've gone through it. He's the only guy I could come up with. But again, I don't know that they're going to talk to him. I would just throw it out there last week when we were talking about it that maybe it's a guy they want to talk to. But other than that, when you look at potential coaches, there is that possibility that they've hid the name really well, or a couple guys that they interviewed already who are going to interview. Because they've done a great job. I got to admit it, I have not been able to unearth some of the names that they have interest in. It's the first time I could ever remember that they've shrouded this stuff in secrecy pretty well. I have to give them credit, but I will tell you that they're very, very big on, according to our team source, very big on outside the box thinkers here. And Geoff, let me ask you this question.
Outside the box thinkers.
well, let me ask you. Well, Graham Harrell was that guy. That was the guy that they had. By the way, I'm told he really kicked ass in his interview. But here's my question.
Yeah, sometimes just though, I think this organization gets so caught. I mean, at the search and the quest for outside the box thinkers led them to Chip Kelly once. So sometimes I think they get a little bit too caught up with their own identity and what they think they are and what they need. Look, you cover a team 15, 20 years, you find warts and they're there. And it doesn't mean I'm saying they're a bad organization or can't win or their priorities misplaced. But we've seen this. Again, the whole Juan Castillo thing being a defensive coordinator.
That was absurd.
Never supposed to be.
That was dumb.
Never supposed to be.
Andy, I love Andy, but yeah, see, I get what you're talking about out of the box thinkers. Sometimes I think you overthink things and you just want to be edgy instead of just getting the best person.
Exactly.
But I do believe, though, they nailed this on thinking about James Urban because of what he's done with Baltimore. They know him obviously because he was in Philly.
Yeah.
Graham Harrell because of his past concepts. It has so little to do. I did a little research. I wanted to get more into Graham Harrell because I knew nothing about him when this all started. Mm-hmm. When the Inquirer put out that he interviewed, or was going to interview, or he interviewed, he actually interviewed 2 Fridays ago. He is so smart and detailed, and certainly what you want as the sort of new type of offensive coordinator or idea guy. It's so more than his offense the offense that he learned at Texas Tech. He's way better than that. You got to actually talk to people who work with him. Mm-hmm. Or know him. I mean, I got so much stuff on this guy. It's too bad he didn't get the job because we would have really learned something. Mm-hmm. But it's okay. Look, their thought process is in the right place. It's just a shame that it's taken this long. But we'll really judge them on who they get. If they get some retread, then they deserve the score.
Yeah, and you know what? Just like how we talk about the dynamic of whether the owner interfered or not, and whether that's a bad thing overall, but maybe a good thing because Doug's too loyal to his coaches, I can see them going that veteran route, which is clearly not the guy they may have wanted from the start, but that actually being the best choice for them. Because at the end of the day, you're just looking for a really good coach. Jim Caldwell's out there. He has a track record of working really well with quarterbacks. Maybe he's not the most progressive thinker in the world, but maybe he's just a really good coach of quarterbacks. I would question how progressive Frank Reich was considered when he took the offensive coordinator job in 2016 when he was unemployed. So again, I don't fault this team for having big aspirations and looking for something, but I do wonder if sometimes that they get caught up in looking too much for one thing.
I agree.
And don't see the forest through the trees.
Very, very fair. And the one thing I would add, though, the reason why it worked in 17 and more than 16, obviously, is because you look at Pederson, Reich, DiFilippo, and Groh. All of them played quarterback. All of them had a say in red zone, third down. The two guys ran the third down offense. One guy ran the red zone. One guy managed Carson differently than the other guy. It was just, as one of the coaches told me, he called a coach at Camelot, best coaching staff he's ever been with. that you just can't, it's impossible to duplicate. They'll never get it like that again. Few do in NFL history where it's so special. Like coaches. I spoke to a couple of coaches of that staff. They had no idea how good it was until it was over, because you're going through it. You can't really reflect on it.
Of course.
And these guys, when they reflect on it, they supported one another. There was very little jealousy. They didn't step on each other's toes. Geoff, you know this as well as I do. You've covered the league a long time. You have no idea how rare that is for coaches not to hate each other or be jealous of each other.
Mm-hmm.
There was very little of that back then.
Yeah, and not only that, that was I would say it's been pretty rare for the Eagles themselves as an organization to have that kind of harmonious atmosphere. I mean, they've won in the past, but we've known everything that's gone on behind the scenes, and it feels like it's trending in that direction again a little bit. But everything came together that year. So, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. I've been thinking about this all day.
Oh, please don't do this. Go ahead.
No. It's how you feel. All right, I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, A, B, and C, and you tell me right now what you think is likeliest to happen. Scenario A is that the Eagles. How do I want to phrase this? Okay. Scenario A is that they get that retread that you're talking about, like a Jim Caldwell or let me see, a Mike McCoy, right? Or a Marty Morningweg. So that's scenario A, the older retread. Scenario B is the guy coaching in the Super Bowl right now, and I guess it's really be Mike McDaniel. Scenario C is the world gets shocked when Press Taylor becomes offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. What scenario do you see happening right now?
Okay, this is not a report because I appreciate all the people that blogged off of our last show. We really do. That was great, but nice. I have no idea. I'll be honest with you. I'm stumped on this one. Mm-hmm. Here's what I'm gonna eliminate retread. The only reason is because I'm gonna trust the way that they're thinking.
Okay.
They want someone who's smart. Now, you mentioned Jim Caldwell. He is a good quarterbacks coach. Mm-hmm. But I just don't know how good he is with coming up with ideas. I don't know that. But I'm talking about.
No, I know. He did a great job with Joe Flacco that year.
He did, and the next year he didn't do as well. Trust me on this, he didn't do as well the next year.
That's true.
Very badly the next year. I'm glad Coach Caldwell got the Lions job. He did a good job. But he did an incredible job for taking over during the season. Who got fired that year? Do we remember who got fired?
Cam Cameron.
Was it Mark Trestman or Cam Cameron?
Cam Cameron.
Okay. He did a great job. Caldwell did a great job under trying circumstances. As a matter of fact, did they not win a Super Bowl that year with him?
They did. He replaced Cam Cameron like 6 or 7 games in the year, and then they went on to win the Super Bowl.
Right. Did a good job. Not as good as next
9-7 2 straight years with the Lions.
Right. But if they're going to be true to what I'm hearing, they're going to be looking for that sort of innovative thinker. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I don't care how old the guy is. There's this misnomer. Andy Reid, by the way, is 61 years old, okay? Mm-hmm. You don't have to be 35 years old or 34 like Graham Harrell would be an outside-the-box thinker. I don't care how old the guy is.
Sure.
I think sometimes we get ageism. We start discriminating against people who are older. By the way, when Andy Reid brought in Tommy Brazier, he was like 75 years old. Are you kidding me? Former D-line coach? Remember that guy?
Of course I do.
Yeah. So come on now, people. I know I've heard that, and I get it. I get the thinking, but you could be older and come up with different thoughts.
I'm just wondering, what are they looking for? I mean, they're not running a Lamar Jackson-like offense. Where
Exactly.
How outside the box do they need to get? They have a really good quarterback. They're probably going to upgrade receiver. They got 2 really good tight ends. I mean, everybody kind of runs the same variation of what everybody else is running, except for basically the Ravens. Again, that's where I go back to, what are you looking for? I mean, I think you should always set your sights on looking for innovative and bright and intelligent. But I guess what I'm saying is there are guys out there who you probably shrug your shoulders at, but at some form or fashion, if they're good coaches, that means they're innovative, bright, and intelligent. So
look,
we'll see. So
exactly.
You got an A or B or a C for me. You don't
know. But it's not the retread. What are the other 2?
A was someone who's on the Super Bowl coaching staff right now. And C was Press Taylor is going to be the offensive coordinator.
I think it's. Well, actually, you didn't say D. a coach that's on a team that's not in the Super Bowl, that's not a retread. That would be interesting. Okay. But by the way, those kind of guys could have been interviewed. By the way, the names have not gotten out. No, there have been very few names that have gotten out for the OC job. It's almost hard to understand.
Well, that is true. Maybe there is another guy on a team and we just don't know yet. But as you mentioned, it's kind of difficult to get these guys when teams are starting to do their offseason planning. They want to know. So I guess we'll see what happens with that. But you're right. The Eagles and the Browns, two teams that still need an offensive coordinator. Let's move on real quickly to the defensive side because we talked about the coaching changes there. I think a lot of people are still wondering why Philip Daniel was fired, and this is the second straight year the Eagles fired their defensive line coach. And is this a case again where they're looking for something different, innovative? You mentioned last podcast, Adam, maybe the detail or the thought process of how they're going to go about their rotations are coming into play here.
Yeah, I think with Philip Daniels, the issue was this. There were a couple things here. While he was very well liked, unlike maybe some of the coaches they've had on defense over the years, everybody liked Philip. But the issue was that he was not a strategist. But here's the problem with that. This goes on Jim Schwartz and Doug Pederson. This is really what you're supposed to do as a head coach. Sure, you come from the offensive side of the football, but you're watching the same tape as all your coaches are. If you're not winning matchups, then you got to ask the defense coordinator, what's the problem? Mm-hmm. Sure, the Eagles D-line is good. It's not great. It's good. But I think if you were willing to talk, if the Eagles were willing to talk to you privately, I'm sure they would tell you they're expecting to do better in certain matchups, and they didn't. This goes on the D-line coach, but it also goes on the D coordinator. This comes on strategy. Right. So while Philip Daniels, Geoff, deserves some of the blame, the defensive coordinator sure as hell deserves a lot of it, or at least half of it, because Daniels worked for him. And Jim, who's super smart, has got to figure it out. I mean, this is what I see. I just go by people who watch the tape tell me. They missed out on a lot. They missed out on some matchups where they clearly should have won. The last matchup against the Seahawks, I mean, you got to be kidding me. And now we could talk all we want about how Russell Wilson beat them, and he certainly did. And the first matchup where they got to him, Jim did a great job. That his scheme was great that game. But that Dolphin game. That will never, ever leave anyone's consciousness of what happened in that game.
That wasn't a good game for the D-line especially.
No, and Schwartz. I mean, look, everyone could have a bad game.
Right.
And people laughingly bring up the Super Bowl. Well, yeah, okay. When it counted, they made a play. But Jim's a good coach. I just think that when you manage people, it's no different in business. I was in management very early in my career. Your job is not just to count money. And hire people. Your job is to manage people and help them get better. And I think part of the issues on defense for the Eagles are simply Schwartz has got to do a better job managing his coaches.
Yeah, although you say that, and now I think about some conversations I was having toward the end of the year. Vinny Curry in particular is a guy who in December played his best football. He finished second on the team with 5.5 sacks. I think 4 came in December, or maybe even 5 of the 5.5. And we noted that he was playing inside in the nickel package. He was moving inside, something they used to do with Brandon Graham a lot, and something he hadn't done since Chip Kelly was his defensive coordinator. So now that I think about what you're saying, I had several conversations with Vinny about that, and he said he was finally getting the time. Remember, earlier in the year, they were giving it to Josh Sweat and some younger guys, and he said, Jim finally, put me into place. He moved me inside. And thinking back, that strikes me now because he didn't say Philip. He said Jim. So you do wonder. I think it leaves me to wonder now, and this is just kind of a speculative based on flashbacks and not necessarily 100% the news or concrete, but I wonder if Jim was taking a little bit more ownership of the D-line rotations in December. For Vinny to have said, wow, Jim did that, not Philip, because usually when you talk to a defensive lineman about position groupings and formations, they say what the defensive line coach tells them to do, not the defensive coordinator. So the fact that Vinny said Jim stands out to me a little bit.
All right. Before we move on here, I do want to, you mentioned this. This is really interesting. So here's my problem with it, though. And okay, so let's say, for argument's sake, Schwartz took over with the strategy because Philip wasn't doing it well. what happened in the interview when they decided to promote this guy? Did they not know this guy was not a good strategist?
Great point.
This is not the process to which the coaches were promoted last year was flawed. It clearly wasn't. It goes on Pederson.
Yeah.
I mentioned it before. I'm not going to stop mentioning it. Doug's got to do a better job with coaching his coaches. It's not something you could quantify in numbers, Geoff. But for you, as long as you and I have covered this league, especially this particular team, when Andy Reid was in his heyday, show me, other than Bill Belichick, a better coach that coaches better than this guy. He was on his guys. He knew how to do it. He'd push them the right way. Why do you wait till the last minute? Why do you wait till it goes south before you take over? You got it. Now, what I don't know, and I'll say this about Schwartz, I have no idea what the conversations were like with he and Philip Daniels. I have no idea what they were like, but I know what the results were, and they were not good enough. And it starts with it starts with the head coach making the decision. Then it goes down to the defensive coordinator Schwartz. He needs to coach his coaches better. And Jim, overall, if you want to be a defense that gets turnovers, which they don't do, and that's a real issue, it starts up front with that D line. It's not just about sacks and getting the wide nine, getting upfield. It's about creating turnovers.
Well, I'll tell you this, from a vetting standpoint and an experience standpoint, right? If you look at the defense now with Matt Burke controlling the D-line, with Ken Flagioli still doing linebackers, and with Marquand Manuel coming in to coach cornerbacks, your three main position coaches have all been defensive coordinators. Burke was one in Miami, Marquand was one in Atlanta, and Flagioli, I think, was one in Washington a long time ago, was he not?
Flagioli? Yeah, Ken Flagioli might have been, but here's the good thing.
I'm positive he was a defensive coordinator somewhere.
He's been a linebackers coach for decades. Matt Burke is super duper smart. Now, what's interesting, and he and Burke and Manuel were only D coordinators for one season. Marquand got the finger pointed at him, and it was so ridiculous. As much of a Dan Quinn fan as I am, DQ fired all three coordinators, which is like unheard of. He fired them after the previous 2 seasons ago. And Marquand got the finger pointed at him. I don't know if you know this. Their injury situation 2 years ago was about as bad as it gets on defense.
Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it was very unfair. I don't know the guy. I remember as a player. But you're right. They have Schwartz, and Burke, by the way, knows the wide nine because he's a Jim Schwartz protege from Detroit. So there's no question. And I talked to a couple guys who've worked with Matt. They think he'll handle it well. I know that D-line is not his forte. But as I said in the last show, the only issue that I would have with Burke being the D-line coach is the technique part of it, not the strategy. He'll have that with matchups. That's why he's getting this job.
Right.
And I'll have more next week. I'm working on something else with Burke, learn a little bit more about him. But it's the technique part, which is very, very big. And I don't know, being able to teach that, he doesn't have that in his background, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, real quick. Flagioli was a defensive coordinator under Spagnuolo in St. Louis for 3 years, from 2009 to 2011. Cool. So you got a lot of experience on this staff.
Wait, how many years? 09 to 11? 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Wow. Okay, that's four. Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Very good.
So I mean, we're not worried about a situation here like where Carson Wentz gets promoted, nobody knows who he is. He's never had experience. This should be a very. There's no excuses for this defensive staff to let 5 rookies beat him for 100 yards again. I'll just say that.
One thing to add to that, the real key here, folks, when you have a coordinator, they've run their own room before. That means they've been a position coach before. You have no idea how important that is. When you mentioned Carson Wentz, had never run a room before until the Eagles promoted him as receivers coach. The assistant position coach never runs the room. It's the guy who actually runs the position. That you get respect by being the guy who runs the room, and I cannot tell you from talking to coaches for 2 decades how important that is.
Definitely. All right, we're going to get into, because we had so many questions.
Oh God, yeah.
The last 2 episodes, we had a lot of leftover, so we want to get into some Ask ITB before we get out of here. But first, let's hear from our sponsors, Adam. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Are you interested in money? Yep, I thought so. Well, on the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast, Mesh will follow paper trails, chat with experts, and break down complex ideas to bring clarity to the mystical financial phenomena and help listeners uncover the story behind their money. Each of these compelling stories will hit a broad range of subjects ranging from buying Bitcoin, dealing with student debt, and everything in between. So if you're interested in money, and I know you are, check out the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast on Anchor. All right. That was great. Let's talk Eagles questions. Let's take Eagles questions because we have a lot from Ask ITB. Adam, you're going to read the questions. We'll respond. Why don't you start us off?
Oh, Moshe, you're going to love this one. It's your guy.
Oh, boy.
Dexter Johnson at Scandal Savage 13 asks, do you guys think Miles Sanders will be unleashed as the feature back next year, or will Pederson use him as a third down specialist with 10 to 12 carries? Thanks. Go ahead.
No, I can't. He's not going to be a third down specialist. He's going to be the featured back. I think people, and Adam, you and I have talked about this, people, I believe, got a false impression of Doug Pederson over the last few years because they never really had a guy like Miles Sanders. And so Doug has always leaned on this committee. And he's been asked about it in press conferences, do you like having backs? And he's always said, yes, I like having this. Because what's he going to say? No, I don't want all these running backs. Only Adam Gase would do that. No. He wants what every coach wants, a 3-down running back who can fit his offense, who can play 65. He wants, to get Miles Sanders, 13 to 15 carries, 4 to 6 catches a game, and unleash him like a Brian Westbrook or a LaShawn McCoy.
Correct. Correct. And Shady was a feature back. So look, when Andy Reid was the Eagles head coach, it certainly in infancy, when he had Deuce Staley, Carl Buckholz, or Brian Westbrook, he didn't have anyone who could be the feature back, so he went with a committee.
Right.
And Jeff's right. We mentioned this problem for the people who have been with us since the beginning. I had mentioned it like a year and a half ago because we got the same question about why the Eagles have a committee. Coaches never go and say, we just want a committee. It's you're married to what you have from a personnel standpoint. So Dexter, I feel strongly that Miles Sanders is going to be the guy. He's going to get 15 to 18 touches a game, which means 12 to 15 carries a game, and he better get, Geoff. Now, this is a little bit of exaggeration, but this guy's so special in the pass game. He should never have fewer than 4 to 5 catches a game. That's how special he is in that part of the game.
I'm going to say a top 7 fantasy back for next year.
Top 3 if he's the guy.
Well, all right. There's a lot.
Well, he'll be the guy, but I think he gets 15, 18 touches. And Geoff, the special part about his game in the passing game, I don't think we really have any idea of how great he's going to be in that area. They're just scratching the surface. I'm telling you, this kid is amazing, and they nailed this pick. And it's funny, other than Avonte Maddox, I would have to say that Miles Sanders, from what I understand, is the other player that like everyone wanted and never even wavered. Like they all wanted this guy. Like it was so obvious he was going to be special.
Right.
And they've already, I hate to say it this early, but they've clearly nailed the pick. And the other thing about Miles Sanders is incredibly high character and hard worker, and the game means a lot to him. And they got this one. They nailed it. They got a second-round running back who's going to be their featured back for many, many years to come.
All right, next question.
All right, let's see. What do we like here? Okay, this is a good one, Geoff. Jay Bolger, at JMark84 on Twitter. There's been some rumors of Josh McCown being the new OC. Have either of you heard these rumors? Is there any truth to them? Jay, the Eagles would like Josh to be a part of the coaching staff at some point, but I talked to his agent, Mike McCartney. I know so many McCartneys by the first name of Mike. I get them mixed up. But Mike, who, by the way, was the Eagles' former pro personnel director. It's crazy for Andy Reid's first 2 years. Mike's got not only is he Josh McCown, but he's got, my goodness gracious, Geoff, he's got Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, he's got a lot of guys.
Yeah. So Mike's a great guy and a great agent. Mike told me, first of all, the rehab 6 months. for Josh from tearing the hamstring off the bone, and then he's going to make a decision because Josh might want to play. And by the way, let's say for argument's sake they get the OC, within the next week or two. They've got their quarterback's coach. So let's say Josh retires. Who's to say he can't be a senior offensive assistant and see where that goes? But Josh, don't forget, he's got a big family. They're in North Carolina. He also coaches high school football, so he's got to take that into consideration.
Absolutely. I agree. I think they'd be silly not to be able to retain him if they could, but that obviously is going to be it'll be his decision. And if he plays, you hope they bring him back here. So we'll see what happens with that.
All right, this is a really interesting question by Randy Harn, at Randy_Harn on Twitter. If we have a successful offseason, what can this team accomplish and what could Carson Wentz accomplish? So, Randy, I think this on the Eagles. And we'll leave the coaching stuff for the moment because we've talked that to death. But if we just look at, from a personnel standpoint, if they add 3 receivers, I know it sounds crazy, 3. They need 3, okay? If they add the right cornerbacks, those are the 2 positions. Who's to say with Doug Pederson's ability to coach football, I mean, just from the way how hard the players play for him and the miracle that they made the playoffs at 9-7 being down with injury, who's to say they can't make a big run next year? So that's kind of where I'm on that, Geoff.
Look, I mean, we like to do the Andy-Doug comparisons. Look what Andy Reid did. He came into Kansas City. He traded for Alex Smith, a veteran. He had still Dwayne Bowe. So he gave it a year and a half, but then he gradually just started to remake the roster, and he brings in just difference-maker guys. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, the running back Kareem Hunt, who, obviously is off the team now. But it didn't take that long for him to just bring in this injection of young, dynamic talent, and that's absolutely what the Eagles need to do. And if they can do that, you can easily see them, being an NFC contender next year and maybe even a Super Bowl contender, but they got to get younger, faster, more dynamic. Can't miss on guys, can't have Arcega-Whitesides not making big progress or holding them back. They really need to get guys on the field who can play and make plays right away.
Another one, Dylan Culberson, DC_8950. Guys, what do you think is a bigger need? This is everyone wants this, is asked this question, receiver, secondary. It's funny, he says secondary. Yes, you're right, Dylan. Sorry, I forgot about that. They need 2 safeties. My God, they need a lot of picks. By the way, they've got 10 picks. This is how I'm answering this question, Dylan. First of all, with those 10 picks, this is a shout out to everyone who works under Howie Roseman. We're talking about Andy Weidel and Ian Cunningham and Anthony Patch.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to tie Howie's hands in the draft room, okay, do not let him trade these picks. Okay, enough. You've got to spend a year on this stuff, for Christ's sake. Let Howie make the goddamn picks. Look.
Isn't that what Stephen Jones did to Jerry, by the way, to keep him from drafting Johnny Manziel?
Oh, is it right? But in all seriousness, these guys do so much work, and Joe Douglas did, and your scouts give these guys a chance. Mm-hmm. And if you trade all these picks, what does that really say? I know he gets excited, and Howie's shown tremendous restraint in terms of free agency, but in the draft now, you've got to do a better job of keeping your picks and all the work that these guys have done. Trust the process. That's all I got to say about that.
I like it. Look, do they need to make 10 picks with their 10 expected draft picks? No, but you would certainly like to see at least 7 or 8. That's what I'll say.
8. Well, 8.
8 would be
okay.
Good. Yeah.
And by the way, I already started looking at it. They a minimum of 6 can make it. That's how much work that they need. Mm-hmm. That's at a minimum, and I could certainly see 8 making it. Oh, then Randy Hart also asked about Carson Wentz. Basically what he's asking is if everyone in the front office does their job, how good could Carson be? What could he accomplish? Randy, there's such an unbelievable respect for Carson Wentz around the league. If Roseman does his job, this is a top 5 quarterback, bar none. You could say whatever you want about this guy. He's getting injured. But, Geoff, you watch this guy inside out. You've seen Carson just as much as I have. How good do you think Carson could be?
I think he can be, with the right people around him, really good, like he was a couple of years ago.
What does that mean, though? How high? How top 5, top 10? Where do you see?
Man, top 5 is tough to tell you. You don't even know what quarterbacks are going to be playing. I don't even know where Tom Brady's going to be next year, right? I think he can be a top 5 potential quarterback with the right people around him and with the right coaches around him. And so right now I don't know who the OC is, and I don't know who how the offensive staff is going to look, and I don't know what they're going to do offensively. So it's hard for me to say, but with the right people around him, I absolutely believe he can be an MVP candidate again.
Okay.
I mean, just look how he played in December with just guys.
I can't believe it. Yeah, that was a true. Remember when we were talking about he needs to trust the guys around him?
Yeah.
Once he did that, he really showed his greatness, his talent. One more from our friend Sean Wolford at Sean Wolford. How much say do assistant coaches have in regards to draft picks? Are the Eagles not having coaches in key areas going into the draft at a disadvantage with pre-draft process starting? No, they're look, they watch tape. I know for a fact that what's that?
Yeah, they have a lot to say.
Yeah, they're position coaches. Absolutely, they grade them for sure. They're absolutely. In fact, I know for a fact that Roseman will absolutely lean on us. He will ask coaches who he really deeply respects. He'll ask them. Not that he respects all these guys, but if he thinks a guy's got a particular expertise, it may not be his position. It's not unlikely for him to go into their offices. Hey, take a look at these guys too. He's done it before. I've heard through the grapevine over the years.
Right.
One of the things about Howie I really respect is he doesn't really worry about, okay, well, you coach this or you only know this, so I don't respect your opinion. He's really not like that. What I've heard from people who've worked for him since 2015, while he's certainly not perfect, no one ever is. He certainly learned from his mistakes. He's become a better listener. That's from several people who are still there. Mm-hmm. Where I think he probably would admit he needed to do a better job of listening to everybody. Where some of the issues that he had, which have been well documented, most of them, he doesn't know everything. He tries hard, and one of the areas where he do a better job is gathering the right information, and I think he's done better job of it. Now the process how it's getting done, I can't speak to because no one knows that, only they do. Mm-hmm. But as I said earlier here a couple minutes ago, if Howie keeps these, I would love to see if they keep all 10 picks, how well they could do. We saw what happened in 2016, which was Howie's best draft. That was the year before, that was the season before Joe Douglas got there, when Tom Donahoe ran the draft. They've had obviously mixed results since that. Some look really, this 18 draft though, with Maddox and Goddard looks, it's certainly encouraging, but they haven't hit the home runs that they hit in 16 yet.
No, interesting that you mentioned 2016, though. So to answer this question, there was no Joe Douglas at the 2016 draft. He was hired after. And so Howie had just kind of taken control back, and that draft was done with heavy influence of the coaching staff. Obviously Carson Wentz was a lot of input from both Doug and Flip and Frank Reich, but also Jeff Stoutland had a lot of input into the drafting of Isaac Seumalo, who's now the starting left guard, and Big V. Who was a 7th round pick, and he's wound up. We killed
Big V is a 5. Yeah, Big V was a 5.
I'm sorry, I meant a 5th round pick. A 5th round.
Yes,
pick,
Big V.
Right.
And look. Jeff Stoutland, his greatness is he was so convinced that Jordan Mailata was going to be a player. They traded up for a rugby player. I mean, we'll talk more about Jordan in another show, but that Jeff Stoutland is so revered in that building. It's just and by the way, for a good reason, because he's been incredible since he's got there. And one more thing I want to add, which I want to give Doug and Howie credit for, their willingness to take in Chip Kelly's coaches should not be underestimated. Because I thought for sure, because of the way that Howie had issues with people prior to who he got reinstated, I was shocked that they retained, and a lot, obviously Howie had a big say in that, of the coaches from Chip's staff. What was it, 6 guys who were retained, something like that?
I don't remember how many. Let's see. There was Unlin. There was
Deuce,
because Deuce was really from Andy's staff.
But he still was with
Unlin. There was Deuce. There was Stout.
Yep.
That's 3 right there.
The tight ends coach, Justin Peele.
Justin Peele, right. 4. And
Press Taylor.
Press Taylor. Good one. 5. Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely there's probably
more. Right. Yeah. Probably more.
Yeah. So no, you're right. That was a good willingness to recognize talent and make sure that you keep it in-house. Good stuff. Good questions, Adam. Thanks for doing that. And that's going to do it for Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank our friends at 97.3 ESPN. You can download their free mobile app and listen to me, Mike, Gil, Ryan Rothstein every day from 2 to 6. Shander and Mays from 12 to 2. Adam Caplan always joining us. I think we'll go back to your regular schedule now, Wednesday at 3 o'clock.
Yes. By the way, I do want to give two people thanks. Very important. First of all, to our senior executive producer, Josh Weinfeld. We don't have a name for Josh in terms of what his title is, but he has been unbelievably invaluable. I'm sure he'll listen to the show, so special thanks to him. He's been incredible with our marketing and our sponsorship and his support and his ideas. By the way, his ideas, our growth, our growth, Geoff, as you well know, is a minimum of 50% of it's due to Josh, and the other half is due to your diligence of getting our show up at 6 a.m. on Monday and Thursday. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to your diligence and your commitment to get the show and to edit it. Really, I am indebted to you, and I really appreciate you.
No, thank you, man. We started this off as a hobby, and now it's become something more than that. And man, I just thank our listeners. They've been awesome. They interact with us so well. And you're right, to Josh, who first time we've ever mentioned his name, we're late in that. He does an incredible job. And if people really liked the hats that we're giving away on our Twitter account at Inside Birds from New Era, all the contests that we're running, and then some of the watch parties that we've done and are going to do in the future. Josh is definitely the brains behind that, so we are incredibly indebted to him. Thank you very much, Josh Weinfeld. We also thank our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They are enhancing the fan experience all the time with their fantastic coverage of the Eagles, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers, all the sports. They've got great podcasts, so you got to make sure you go over to PHLSportsNation.com, check out their coverage. As always, we thank our producer here, Hunter Hody. Oh, my God. I need to go to bed. Hunter Brody.
Yes.
You can find his work, his excellent work, his passionate fan takes at Sports Talk with Broads on YouTube. It is a phenomenal YouTube page. We thank Todd Harriman's former Eagles offensive lineman and his company, Body Check Wellness, for their overall support. And again, check out our Twitter page at Inside Birds, because I believe a giveaway started today. Another New Era hat. I believe that's what it was. We'll be giving away. Is that correct, Adam? It's a New Era hat, right? I know we gave
beautiful. Yeah, those New Era hats, man, they were beautiful. I need an NFL logo one. I can't wear an Eagle stuff. I can't wear one of the 32 teams, but they do a phenomenal job. And special thanks to New Era and obviously Todd Harriman and his group for Body Check Wellness. They've been great. Anyone else we need to thank here?
Nope, just make sure you're following us on Twitter at Inside Birds, and then please be a subscriber to our YouTube page, Inside the Birds on YouTube. And last but not least, if you could all, listeners, please go rate and review us on your podcast platform. You do us a great service. It really helps us out when you give us a 5-star review and rate us with some kind, positive words, as many of you already have. So that's it for this edition of Inside the Birds. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.
If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.